Hello, everyone, and thank you for taking the time to hear about the city's newly adopted Reimagine Nature Public Lands Master Plan. My name is Kat Moss, and I'm a public lands planner with Salt Lake City.
And my name is Minerva Jimenez, and I'm the Community Engagement Coordinator for Salt Lake City Public Lands.
We are here today to share some highlights of the Reimagine Nature Plan, orient you all to the plan structure, and to look at some of the goals, objectives, and metrics for the Public Lands Department over the next 20 years. So I will begin with a quick inventory of our current public land system. Unlike many other cities' park systems, Salt Lake City has a very wide variety of outdoor spaces to manage and care for. And these include over 1,600 acres of natural lands, including almost 6,500 acres of foothill natural area, over 86,000 urban forest trees throughout our city, 6 golf courses, over 70 miles of trails, and 609 acres of parks and outdoor civic areas, which include also the Salt Lake City Cemetery and the Regional Athletic Sports Complex. That being said, as our city's population continues to increase, we need to anticipate how our public spaces will serve our city residents and visitors without our level of service suffering. In 2019, Public Lands conducted a needs assessment to kick off this master planning process and found that by 2040, we as a city will need 94 additional acres of open space to match the level of service we have today. To put that into perspective, that is about the acreage of our downtown Liberty Park. So, this plan will help us prioritize projects, improvements, and management in order to maintain an excellent level of service to our city.
Before we begin, I want to show a high-level overview of how the master plan was developed. As you can see, Public Lands began engagement in September 2020, and a series of engagement windows followed. The plan was officially adopted in June 2022 to set the foundation for the Parks, Trails, and Open Space Bond, as it helped us identify and prioritize projects to be funded with the bond. While the projects funded through the bond, which will be completed in the next 10 years, are high priorities in the Reimagine Nature Master Plan, they are not the only way public lands in the city will fulfill the goals of the plan over the next 2 decades. In addition to helping inform the bond projects that made it on the ballot, the master plan provides the department with a strategic guide aligning the department's actions with overall goals directed by community members. As Salt Lake City evolves over the next 20 years, the Public Lands Plan will ensure the city's outdoor spaces are reflective of community needs and inviting to all. Since engagement played a critical role in the development of the master plan, I want to review the goals of the engagement and our outcomes. The engagement effort for this plan was very robust with the goal of creating a community driven plan. With a lot of the engagement happening during the height of the pandemic, Public Lands had to be creative about how we engaged with people. To ensure voices were heard, the planning team utilized a variety of digital and in person engagement techniques and advertisements to reach typically underrepresented communities. We owe a big thanks to the 85 university students and Professor Eves Garcia, who assisted with the engagement. Most of the engagement happened in the late 2020, early 2021, and resulted in over 12,000 people engaging in the process. While the sheer number of participants is impressive, we also wanted to focus on the quality of the dialogue and inclusive engagement to represent community ideals. There was a big focus throughout this process on equitable engagement. This map here shows event and interview locations that were strategically selected to ensure citywide representation. Many of the engagement goals were met because of the non-traditional methods of engagement used to communicate with typically underrepresented folks, and we're fortunate to be able to work with university students, organization partners, staff, and volunteer ambassadors to make this engagement effort possible. More information about the engagement efforts can be found within the plan itself, beginning on page 19.
So now we'll get into the plan itself. So this plan is based upon what we discovered during the public engagement period and is comprised of kind of three main sections. The first part looks at the plan's major goals, which are listed here on the screen on the left-hand side, which are sustain, connect, welcome, protect, and grow. The second section talks about 10 transformative projects that also came out of public engagement that will help us achieve these five goals. And then the final section is a set of actionable strategies that provide the department with guidance for plan implementation. Finally, kind of woven throughout the plan are three values that were derived also from community input and were determined as integral to public land success. And those are equity, livability, and stewardship, which play a significant role in the goals, projects, and implementation of the plan over the next 2 decades. The Salt Lake City Public Lands Master Plan Vision Statement proposes big ideas to transform and sustain quality outdoor spaces that are safe, welcoming, and walkable, ensuring people, wildlife, and ecosystems all benefit from fair investment of Salt Lake City resources over the next 2 decades. So, with this in mind, we're just going to go in to describe each of the five plan goals, and then we'll follow with a brief overview of the transformative projects.
Here are the first three, and we'll start with sustain. Sustain focuses on improving environmental health and climate resiliency with the city by strategizing water conservation, enhancing the natural environment with the tree canopy and habitat, which in turn will lead to improvements in human and ecosystem health. The next goal, Connect, focuses on linking public spaces citywide and enhancing accessibility to public lands, both through physical connectivity and improved information sharing. It focuses on park users, pedestrians, and cyclists, how we can connect them to our green spaces. Welcome, centered on creating inclusive spaces that are appealing to all members of the community. Not only does it focus on the physical parks and amenities, but also highlights the need for programming events and recreation that serve the communities in which they're located. The final two are protect and grow. Protect is centered on stewardship and caring for our natural, cultural, and historic assets. These assets range from iconic structures to irreplaceable natural resources, some examples being Allen Park and the Jordan River. A large focus on this of the section is on stewardship and the community's power to have an impact on spaces that matter to them. To enhance care for our shared outdoor spaces, we will seek out opportunities to partner with advocacy groups and schools to educate on how the public can be stewards of the land and learn its history. And finally, Grow examines how the city can expand and efficiently manage the public land system to meet the needs of an increasing population. As Salt Lake City population increases, our public lands receive more visitation and work harder to serve the community. Fulfilling this goal will help us be productive and strategic about investment in our lands and will help us get creative to continue serving the needs of the city as there is not a lot of land left for the new development of parkland.
So, the second part of this plan that I mentioned is expressed through the 10 transformative projects that were a high priority for the public, each of them working to fulfill at least one of the five goals that Minerva just went through. These projects will really lead to a shift in how we, public lands, and the city operate. And they range from local community initiatives to larger regional scale efforts that will require complex collaboration. So, here are on the screen are the 10 projects, and we're just going to go into each of them really quickly now. So put environment first and grow our urban forests work to fulfill the sustain goal. Put environment first is focused on conserving and increasing biodiversity in our public lands by prioritizing climate resilient and native plantings, water conservation and management, and increasing habitat, as well as a focus on programming and education around our environment and stewardship. Another major outcome of this transformative project is the expansion of our public lands native plant propagation program. And then grow our urban forest is not only about increasing tree plantings on our publicly owned landscapes, but also includes expanding awareness of how to steward our urban forest. Individual projects include launching an awareness campaign to support new trees that are adapted to our climate, educate on best watering practices, identify strategies to overcome equity barriers, planting climate adaptive trees, and kickstarting our urban wood reutilization program in the city, which we have funding now to begin. Then these next two here fall under the connect goal. So first, Connect the Mountains to the Lake really focuses on completing missing links in regional trail connections and greenways in the city and beyond. So from Wasatch Mountains and the Foothill Trails to the Jordan River Parkway and the Salt Lake Marina. It also includes creating greenways and daylighting creeks throughout the city while adding trails, improving habitat, and increasing opportunities for recreation. And then just 5 minutes from here is a signage and wayfinding campaign to make it easier to navigate to and within our public lands. This project will increase information and tools for learning about our parks, trees, activities, and programs in all of our public spaces. Right now, one of the projects that we're just finishing up is the creation of a new bilingual signage standard in English and Spanish. So we'll begin using this standard in all of our public spaces and start to replace all of our single language signage with this new bilingual standard to increase our level of service.
These next two projects work to fulfill the welcome goal. Reimagine neighborhood parks will help identify priorities for park redevelopment, which will allow us to invest in parks to increase community representation and neighborhood identity within these spaces. It will also help us promote volunteerism, contributions, and really formalize our friends of groups. Coming soon to a park near you is really focused on programming. Projects include increasing partnerships for events and performances in our parks, providing programming for nature based education, volunteerism, outdoor recreation, and horticulture, and will allow us to explore adding concessions to more of our parks. The protect goal includes these two projects. Revive Our River focuses on the Jordan River Parkway and how we can promote access, equity, beauty, recreation, and ecological health along the parkway. Later this year, we'll be kicking off the Emerald Ribbon Master Plan, which will help us achieve these goals. Some individual projects include exploration of a kayak rental program, multilingual signage, and the development of Glendale Regional Park, and investment in other green spaces along the river. Establishing welcoming park spaces along the river and furthering integration of the Rose Park and Glendale golf courses into the Jordan River Parkway will help us to foster community gathering and bring the river into focus as one of SLC's most desirable recreation destinations. Sustaining our stories focuses on embracing the stories that have shaped us as city, focusing on underrepresented communities and indigenous communities, and expressing and celebrating these stories through landscapes, structures, placemaking, and art. Some specific initiatives for this project include identifying more appropriate, more meaningful names for some of our local parks and open spaces, investing in restoring and enhancing iconic structures and landscapes, and working with partners to tell stories within our public lands. And finally, to address the grow goal, we have these two transformative projects. With Downtown Comes Alive, we hope to increase green and active spaces downtown, specifically that will contribute to livability in a dense urban core. This includes investing in Pioneer Park, initiating creative partnerships and projects to integrate green areas and plaza spaces, and to increase the park access downtown, which is expected to see the highest level of future growth. Currently, we're working on confirming phase one of improvements in Pioneer Park consistent with the vision and plan that was developed last year. And Welcome to the Green focuses on inviting other appropriate uses for golf courses for greater public benefit that will not conflict with golf. This could include opening up access to clubhouses, incorporating walking paths or trails, exploring dog areas and frisbee golf, and hosting events outside of typical golf use, like outdoor movie nights, racing, skiing, or sledding.
And now we are at the third and final section of the plan. This is the action strategies section, which is designed more for implementation. The action strategies outlined in Chapter 8, which begin on page 176, are the playbook of tasks at hand that are identified to achieve the 5 goals and undertake the 10 transformative projects that we just went over. So, this is kind of an example of one of the tables that identify supporting policies and high level actions. So, this is really already working to ensure that this plan does not sit on a shelf and that there is accountability by public lands and the city to see it through. However, it is general enough to ensure flexibility over the next decade in how we undertake tasks and when they occur based on public input and city priorities. Our next focus, now that the master plan is adopted, is on striking a balance among competing priorities. Public Lands is currently working on starting a 5-year public lands strategic plan that will guide our operations, annual work plan, and capital improvement planning funding allocations for the coming years to ensure that we stay on track to fulfill the goals outlined in the master plan over the next 2 decades.
Frequently asked questions. Is the Reimagine Nature Master Plan the same as a parks, trails, and open space bond? No. Reimagine Nature informed the projects that were included in the bond, but Reimagine Nature Master Plan includes many more goals, objectives, and strategies than are encompassed in the bond. The projects in the bond will be delivered in 10 years, whereas the master plan will dictate department goals for the next 20 years. The next question is, what is level of service? Level of service analyzes the availability of parks and open space as a function of park acres in relation to population. It is calculated by open space acreage per 1,000 residents. The last question, there isn't a lot of space left for new parks and open space in the city. How can we increase level of service if we are out of space? Answer, throughout the master plan, there are several recommendations for projects that increase level of service in creative ways. Some examples of this include the downtown green loop, which is exploring more green space in our city's rights of way or creating more public green spaces within plazas. There are a few new parks funded by the bond that will contribute to the city's level of service, including the new Glendale Regional Park and the new park at the Fleet Block. For additional questions, please email publiclands@slcgov.com. And with that, I'll leave you to dive into the master plan, which can be found using the QR code on your screen. If any questions arise, please feel free to email. Thank you for your time.